Hi everyone, this is Mike from the St Andrews Wargaming blog, and I'm here today to bring you my review of my brand new Codex. That's Codex Deathwatch. This is something new that I'm trying for Codex reviews for the blog, so if you have any suggestions or improvements or anything you like or didn't like, please comment below and let me know. So, as I said, this is from St Andrews Wargaming blog, which is a blog that brings you written battle reports, sort of old school White Dwarf reports with maps and plenty of hobby content. So let's jump straight into the Codex and see what we've got. So here are the special rules for the Codex. Pretty similar to what we had before. The Deathwatch get and They Shall Know No Fear, allowing them to reroll failed morale checks, which is quite nice. They have special issue ammunition on all the units, infantry units, bikers and dreadnoughts. And this special issue ammunition is pretty much unchanged. These are Dragonfire bolts, which are add 1 to hit rolls for the weapon when targeting a unit in cover. Hellfire rounds, which are always wounding on a 2+, except against vehicles and Titanic units. Kraken bolts, which add 6 inches to the range of a bolt gun and improve your AP by 1. Or Vengeance rounds, which subtract 6 inches from a bolt gun range and improve your AP by 2. Having used Deathwatch for a while before, most of the time you're going to focus on the Hellfire rounds or the Vengeance rounds if you're in range, because these are really useful. Kraken bolts are good for getting additional range on your backfield objective holders to make them shoot even further without moving. To be honest, I find there's very little use for Dragonfire bolts. The +1 to hit bonus is sort of offset by your opponent's cover bonus. So in a lot of cases you might want the Kraken bolt to get -1 AP and remove the cover. However, for some new weapon types in the book, it may come in useful, so it may be seen a bit more use. The other thing about the special issue ammunition is that there is a greatly expanded roster of weapons that can take it. These have been upgraded to include most of the Primaris weapons, as well as Stormbolters, meaning that your Terminators are finally getting to use special issue ammunition. So here's the war gear list. We'll take a bit more look in this in detail when we get to the specific unit requirements. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the special rules, and then we'll go and take a look at the units, unit by unit. So the abilities, you gain Defenders of Humanity, which is essentially objective secured. Now, those of you that read my blog know that I'm a big fan of this rule. I still think it's a really strong rule and it can be game-winning in certain circumstances. So it's good to see that the Deathwatch now have this. So this works quite well in the game. Mission tactics are basically the Deathwatch equivalent of chapter tactics. How this works is at the start of the game, you pick a certain unit type. For example, troops, fast attack, elites, heavy support, and everyone with this rule gets to reroll wound rolls of 1. There are various ways throughout the Codex to change your mission tactics, either through a stratagem or warlord traits, as we'll see in a second. I think this is not bad. It's certainly a powerful ability for most of the army to have, and it gives you good variability in being able to change it. I don't think it's as strong as some of the chapter tactics we've seen, for example, the Space Marine or other chapter tactics types for different races. For example, it would be nice for the Deathwatch to have a sort of -1 to hit against shooting as per Raven Guard, or for the ability to fall back and still shoot, as these are a very powerful firepower army, the Deathwatch, and don't want to be locked in combat. Although there are ways to get around that with the kill teams. So I'll see how it plays out. At the moment it seems strong, reasonably strong, but not too overpowered. So next we'll move on to the stratagems. And this is where a lot of the power of armies now comes from. You share some of the generic stratagems with Space Marines, so you'll recognise a lot of these if you play Space Marines or you play against Space Marines. So first up we have the Armour of Contempt for 1 command point. This allows a Deathwatch vehicle to ignore mortal wounds on a 5+, and it applies for the rest of the phase. This isn't one that you'll get used to often, however I can see it being of use, for example, the Corvus Blackstar. If you're bringing your Corvus Blackstar up the field quickly, then it will probably be the closest model in range for a lot of smite attacks. So the ability to ignore smite mortal wounds or other psychic power mortal wounds for 1 command point could potentially save it at times. Next up we have Auspex Scan for 2 command points. This is a really strong stratagem, especially with the special issue ammunition. This allows a unit that arrived from reserve to be targeted by one of the Deathwatch infantry units if they deploy within 12 inches. You can immediately shoot the unit, but you subtract 1 from all hit rolls. As I said, with special issue ammunition, this could be really powerful and cause a lot of damage to enemy deep strikers. Next you have Armory of the Watch Fortress. This is the sort of generic 1 relic or 2 relics for 1 or 3 command points. So 1 additional relic for an extra command point. Deathwatch do have some decent relics, so this may be of use sometimes. Next you have Hellfire Shells, which is the standard Space Marine one. For 1 command point you can use it on an infantry model with a heavy bolter or an Infernus heavy bolter. You make 1 to hit roll, and if you hit, the target suffers D3 mortal wounds. This can be quite useful for getting units with good and vulnerable saves or tough units for really good mortal wound dealing on the army, which is nice. Next we have Orbital Bombardment for 3 command points. If you don't know what this does, if your Warlord doesn't move, you can pick a point in the battlefield. On a roll of a d6, each unit within that many inches gets d3 mortal wounds and a 4+. To be honest, I've never used this with the Space Marines. I don't see me using it much with the Deathwatch. Really expensive for 3 command points, and you have the chance that you'll roll low on the d6 roll, or you won't actually hurt anyone by rolling a 4+, so one of these I think you can pretty much ignore. Empiric Channeling, same as it is in the Space Marine one. It helps your Psykers cast psychic powers. As someone who doesn't run a lot of Psykers, again, not much use. Teleportarium, now this is a great stratagem. 1 to 3 command points, 1 command point for each unit you set up in the Teleportarium. You can set up a Deathwatch infantry unit or a Deathwatch dreadnought, and this is essentially your form of deep strike for the Deathwatch. So this is a really strong stratagem, and I can see it being used a lot, and it does stop you from having to take drop pods to get your units there, so this will be really strong. Death the Alien, this was the one that we saw in the index. So in the fight phase, each roll of a 6+ to hit against units that don't have Imperium, Chaos or Unaligned, you get to make an extra attack with the same weapon. Not really wild about this. Maybe of use sometimes if you've got a kill team tooled up for combat, but most of the time you're better off saving the command points. Again, some more generic ones. Only in Death does Duty End, allows a slain character to attack again, really strong. Honour Your Brothers, 3 command points, you can pick an infantry or a biker unit and they get to fight again. Can be really strong under the right circumstances if the unit's armed appropriately. Wisdom of the Ancients, Dreadnoughts give you a reroll of hit rolls to 1 bubble. Pretty good if you're fielding Dreadnoughts, but again, not of much use. Flak Missile, again, does D3 mortal wounds on a flyer when fired with a missile launcher. A strong stratagem, really useful against flyers or units with the fly keyword that aren't also -1 to hit. Adaptive Tactics, this allows you to change your mission tactics at the start of your turn. Cost 2 command points or 1 command point if you have a Watchmaster. So this is pretty useful and will get you using a Watchmaster. Stem the Green Tide. Really strong against orcs at 2 command points. When your unit fires Overwatch against a charging orc unit, your opponent must subtract 1 from their charge distance for each model that was slain by Overwatch fire. Really strong if you've got frag cannons or Deathwatch shotguns and you use the rounds that hit automatically. This can be really nasty against an orc charging unit and could essentially shut down a unit's charge. Targeting scramblers allows you to remove all marker lights from a unit that are hit by Tau marker lights. Can be useful, but must be used immediately after you've been hit by 1 or more marker lights, which means that your opponent could always, you either save it to the end of the phase and hope that your opponent will target a unit again that already has marker lights, or you just use it and it's the risk that your opponent can hit them again with marker lights. So this one's a bit unusual. Intercepting volley, used against Eldari units that can fly. Essentially the same as Auspex Scan, except it doesn't target units that arrive from reserve. It attacks units that can fly. So this can be strong. Synaptic Severance, really powerful against Tyranids. Allows you to shoot at Synapse characters even if they're not the closest enemy unit. And given the Hellfire round, so the wounding on 2+ rounds on special fire ammunition, this can be really strong for taking out Tyranid synaptic characters and really dealing a blow to that army. Overkill is a stratagem used against Necrons. Basically, you pick a Deathwatch unit in your army, and all Necron units within 12 inches of that subtract 1 from reanimation protocols. This is pretty strong, as one of the annoyances about fighting Necrons is damaging a unit but not quite killing it and seeing a lot of models come back the following turn. So this can help stop that to some effect, so it could be really strong against Necron units. Next, we have the Doctrines. So these are 2 command points each, and essentially you get 1 for each unit type in the enemy army. And for 2 command points, a single Deathwatch unit can add 1 to wound rolls for attacks against a unit of that type. Again, this is really strong. I think at 2 command points it's a bit expensive, but still really useful. Deathwatch being a sort of veteran army, you're probably not going to have a huge amount of command points, so you could easily burn through these using the Doctrines. But I think it's a really powerful ability to add 1 to your wound rolls. So for example, if you had a unit of veterans with melter guns or combi melters, you could be attacking a standard toughness 7 vehicle. You could be wounding it on a 2+ using one of these tactics and getting rerolls of 1 to wound with the right mission tactic. So this will almost guarantee a really strong attack against a certain enemy unit or units. So I think this can be really powerful. Next up, we have Optimized Salvo. This essentially allows you to pick a Deathwatch unit and you can use different special issue ammunitions within the same unit. Normally, a unit has to use the same special issue ammunition when they're shooting. This allows you to select different kinds. Could be useful every once in a while, but I don't see it getting used too often. Next up, we have the Clavis. So, your Watchmaster, if you have one in your army, can attack an enemy vehicle within an inch of it. On a 2+, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. This could be useful in the right circumstances. From my previous experience with Deathwatch, vehicles is one area where they can struggle. You either need to load up your kill teams to go for them, either with missile launchers or melter guns or combi melters. Otherwise, they can really struggle against vehicles. So this could be useful for taking out a damaged vehicle or taking it down a tier. Decapitation Doctrine. So for 2 command points, a Deathwatch unit can reroll all failed to wound rolls against an enemy warlord in either the shooting phase or the fight phase. This could be really powerful for taking out an enemy warlord. So using the right circumstances, very useful. Tactical flexibility. So essentially you can take a unit of 10 Deathwatch veterans and split them into 2 units of 5, or for other units, a unit of 6 models can split into 2 units of 3. Not one I ever see being used often. You really don't see larger units of Space Marines due to morale issues. You want to generally keep the units below 5 models, so you're not as penalised by morale. So not a stratagem I see being used that often. And then finally, Tempest Shells. So a Deathwatch infantry model that attacks a vehicle with special issue ammunition. You make a single to hit roll, but if you hit, you do D3 mortal wounds. Again, really nice. As I said before, Deathwatch can struggle with vehicles, so this is another tool for them to cause damage to enemy vehicles, which is always nice. So, moving on to the Warlord traits, we have a number of traits here. Bane of Monstrosities, which we saw in Chapter Approved, allows you to reroll failed wound rolls when attacking vehicles or monsters. Lord of Hidden Knowledge, I think this is the one you're going to see all the time. It's essentially your Warlord gets a free reroll for certain abilities, and each time you use a stratagem on a 5+, you get a command point back. In all honesty, I think this is the command point you're only ever going to see used with the Deathwatch. You have a lot of nice stratagems. You want to keep your command points as long as possible. And as with most codexes that have come out so far, this is the Warlord trait that you'll tend to see. Castellan of Black Vault allows you to add 1 to the damage of a weapon carried by your Warlord. Again, this could be useful, for example, with a Watch Captain with a Thunderhammer, or even the Watchmaster with his Guardian Spear. The ability to do more damage, really strong in combat, but again, I just don't think is good as the ability to get back command points. Watch Eternal is your 6-up Feel No Pain, but it also works not only for your Warlord, but all units within 6 inches of the Warlord. So this is a bit more powerful than the standard ability you'd see in the Codex, and honestly, pretty good. Deathwatch do have a problem with durability, so anything that will boost that. Again, I don't think it's as good as the command points, getting your command points back, but still pretty strong tactic to take. Vigilance Incarnate allows you once during the game to change your mission tactics. Again, pretty strong, but there's other ways to do this in the army, so not one I think you'd see often. Nowhere to Hide. You pick an enemy unit and they don't get the ability of cover against any Deathwatch attacks, Deathwatch unit attacking within 6 inches of the Warlord. Not bad, not great. Again, I think there's simply better Warlord traits. I think you're going to see Lord of Hidden Knowledge or Watch Eternal creeping up more often. For the relics, we're looking at some really good relics here. You've got the Bane Bolts, which is models with special issue ammunition. You add 1 to the damage, and for each wound roll of a 6+, you get a mortal wound against the target. Not a bad ability. I think we'll see in a minute, but I think the Guardian Spear on the... Let's just check. The Guardian Spear on the Watchmaster is 2 damage. So going up to 3 damage per shot and the ability to do mortal wounds is pretty strong. I think that's a really good one to consider in the shooting phase. Your ability to do 3 damage per shot, in addition to the benefits of special issue ammunition, are really strong. Beacon Angelus, this was the one we saw in the index. So Once per battle at the end of the movement phase, the bearer can use it to teleport a friendly Deathwatch infantry or biker unit that is either on the battlefield or in the teleportarium. You essentially deep strike it within 6 inches of the bearer, but you still have to stay more than 9 inches away from the enemy. Not one decent enough, but in all honesty, it's no better than just using the teleportarium. It's quite useful, I guess, for repositioning units that are already on the board, either if they find themselves out of position, but I don't think it's one of the stronger of the relics. Dominus Aegis, this replaces a Storm Shield. The benefit of this is if the bearer doesn't move, then all friendly Deathwatch units within 6 inches gain a 5-up invulnerable. This could be really powerful if you've got a character that's guarding your backfield objective holders or your backfield Deathwatch units and is unlikely to be moving. Then this is a really strong ability. It's a bit short range, so you'd have to sort of clump together to get maximum benefit, but I think it could be useful. The Osseous key is for Watchmasters only. Enemy vehicles subtract 1 to hit from hit rolls within 9 inches of the model, and each time you fight you can get an additional attack against enemy vehicles within an inch. If it hits, you suffer D3 mortal wounds. The enemy vehicle suffers D3 mortal wounds. Again, pretty good at helping Deathwatch take on vehicles, but it does mean that your Warlord or your Watchmaster has to get really close to them, so could be an issue on the survivability. Thief of Secrets is a power sword that has the following profile. So it's strength user, -3 EP, 2 damage. Allows you to pick an army key type, so either Orcs, Tyranids, Tau, Eldari, or Necrons, and you could reroll all failed to wound rolls. Pretty powerful. If you know who your opponent's going to be, it could be useful. However, in a tournament setting, a lot of the times you may not get the ability if you're not facing these units, but even then it's still a power sword that does 2 damage, so not terrible. Finally, we have the Tomb of Ectoclades, if I'm pronouncing that right, and this essentially allows you to pick an additional mission tactic and apply the effects to models within 6 inches of the bearer. So this can be really useful for targeting a number of different enemy unit types with mission tactics in a turn. So overall, I think there's some strong relics there. I honestly don't know which one's best. I like the idea of the Bane Bolts on the Watchmaster. That'll be really powerful. Again, the Dominus Aegis is strong for if you want to improve the durability of your Deathwatch units, and the Tomb is again good for the getting different mission tactics, so that's quite nice. So the only other special rules we have are the Librarius Discipline, which are exactly the same as the Space Marine ones, so I don't think we need to go over it here. So instead we will start looking at the individual units. So again, Watchmaster is pretty much as he was in the Index. Still costs 130 points. He's a pretty strong Warlord or character to lead your army. He gets a 2-up save. He gets 6 wounds and extra wounds. He's hitting on a 2+ with rerollable. He allows all units within 6 inches to reroll all hits, so that's really strong. It's essentially a chapter master without having to pay the command points. His Guardian Spear is strong in shooting, as I said. It's strength 4, -1 AP, so when combined with special issue ammunition can go up to -3 AP, and it's 2 damage a shot. In combat, he's strength 5, so it helps him deal with infantry and bikers. -3 AP and D3 damage. Really strong character. I like him. It's probably who's going to lead my army for most. Artemis, again, decent character. He's a bit expensive. He costs as much as a Watchmaster, but he only allows rerolls of hit rolls to 1 for Deathwatch units, not full rerolls. The reason you would take Artemis is his Hellfire Flamer, which now wounds on a 2+, unless it's a vehicle. So that's a really nice bonus for him. And his Stasis Bomb, which is essentially a one-use only grenade that if it hits, it does D6 mortal wounds. So this is really powerful for taking on your a specific enemy unit. I've actually had it before take out a Wraith Knight when you hit it in Overwatch, which was fantastic. Finish it off. Next up, we have the Watch Captain. Again, who's pretty much the same. One of the big things which I like about the new Codex is that now more characters have access to jump packs. In the Index, only the Watch Captain could take a jump pack and none of the HQ units can take bikes. So it really restricted the mobility. However, now Librarians and Chaplains can take jump packs, so that really helps them out with their mobility on the battlefield and for supporting units or getting around, so that's really nice. The Watch Captain is pretty much a Space Marine Captain who has access to a couple of nice war gear items such as the Xenophase Blade, which forces your opponent to reroll successful and vulnerable saves. So that's quite nice. With -3 AP, you're probably going to be getting through most armor and denying them a save or making them a 6-up save, and getting them to reroll successful and invulnerable saves is pretty nice. So the Watch Captain can take Terminator armor, a jump pack. You've also now got the Primaris Watch Captain, who doesn't have the mobility of the Watch Captain, but has the extra wound. Again, you can take a Librarian. You can now take a jump pack, and you can take Terminator armor, so his mobility is a lot better. Librarian's pretty decent in the army. I don't think the Space Marine, the Librarian psychic powers are the best. There's some useful ones. I think Null Zone is really useful, but the only problem with that is so short ranged. The amount of times you'll actually be able to use it are slim. I am going through some of these reviews quite quickly because they're essentially Space Marine ones. If you know Space Marines, you'll know what they can do, and then we can focus on the veterans. So I'd say you can take a Primaris Librarian or a Librarian with jump pack or Terminator armor. Again, you can take a Chaplain. He can now take a jump pack, which is great. He can help support your Vanguard veterans, allowing them to reroll failed hit rolls in combat, so that's nice. You can take Terminator armor. You can also take a Primaris Chaplain. Now, we get onto the main body of the Codex, and that is the Deathwatch veterans. One thing to note is that the veterans did get slightly cheaper. They're now 16 points a model, as opposed to 19 points a model in the Index, so a nice little points reduction. However, you do now pay a point for your bolt gun. This is to represent the special issue ammunition. What's good about this is that in the Index, you are paying 19 points a model regardless, even if you took other weapons. So you're essentially paying the tax for special issue ammunition, even if you couldn't use it. So now this does make things a bit cheaper. So a veteran is now 17 points per model. Still pretty expensive, I feel, for what they can do. The extra attack is nice, but I would really have wanted to see some improvement to their durability, as they're still simply just Marines and they die quite easily. What this does mean is that one of the weapons you're probably going to take with the veterans is the frag cannon. Not only did that go down in points, but you no longer pay for the special issue ammunition. So a Deathwatch veteran with frag cannon is now 41 points compared to 49 in the Index, and a veteran with a shotgun is now 19 points compared to 24 in the Index. So your normal veteran has got 2 points cheaper, your frag cannon veteran's got 8 points cheaper, and your shotgun veteran has got 5 points cheaper. So that's not too bad. It will maybe allow you to field a few extra models. As last time, The kill teams, you can take a Terminator, a Biker, or a Vanguard Veteran in the unit. And some of these have benefits. Sorry, I'll just show you some nice pictures here as I'm talking about it. The best one, I think, is the Vanguard Veteran. That allows a unit to fall back from combat and still be able to shoot. So this is great for not having your units tied up in combat, and really powerful. The only downside of a lot of these is if you add either a Biker, a Terminator, or a Vanguard Veteran, it really does limit their mobility, as the only transport option they can use now is the Corvus Blackstar. They can no longer go in drop pods with the Vanguard or the Terminator. Not that the Bikers could before, but you could take the Terminator and put it in a drop pod for your kill team. Terminators allow you to ignore the effects of morale. Quite nice if you're fielding big units, but the Terminators are still pretty expensive. Bikers allow you to fall back and still charge. Not the best of abilities for the kill team, I think, because you really don't want to be in combat. Your strength is in shooting with the special issue ammunition, not combat. One of the neat tricks about the kill team is that they can replace their bolter with items from the Deathwatch equipment list. So what this means is that you can replace their bolter with either another weapon, such as a heavy shotgun, combi weapon, for example. But what you can also do is replace their bolter and then take a bolter and a chainsword. What this means is that in combat, each of your veterans goes up to 3 attacks, which is a nice bonus for them. They're not amazing in combat, but an extra attack on each veteran, so 15 attacks or 16 attacks on a basic unit, is pretty powerful. You could also take a bolt pistol. However, a bolt pistol will now cost you a point, which means you'll be going up to 18 points each, and I simply don't think it's worth it for getting to shoot in combat. I'd rather the extra attacks for the chainsword. So that's a nice wee tip. Now the Primaris Marines, as we'll talk about in a minute, the Intercessors now get special issue ammunition. The Primaris Marines seems a lot stronger for Deathwatch. The only things the veterans have going for them is access to better war gear. So you can take the frag cannons and the shotguns, or you can take melter guns, combi melters, and transport options, which the Primaris still lack. So you can't put the veterans in a Corvus Blackstar, or a Rhino, or a Razorback, or a drop pod.